What if the real problem isn't that you can't focus, but that you've been trying to force focus in entirely the wrong way? Most people treat concentration like a battle. They sit down, stare at their work, and try to wrestle their attention into submission through sheer willpower. When their mind wanders, they get frustrated and try even harder. It's exhausting, and worse, it doesn't work. The brain doesn't respond well to force. It responds to conditions. Think about the last time you were completely absorbed in something. Maybe you were reading a book and looked up to find hours had passed, or you were working on a problem and forgot to eat. That state wasn't achieved through willpower. Something else happened. The question is, what? And can we create those conditions deliberately? The answer is yes. But first we need to understand what makes focus so difficult in the first place. Here's what typically happens. You decide you need to focus on something important. Let's say it's a difficult textbook chapter or a complex problem you need to solve. You sit down with good intentions. For the first minute, maybe two, you're engaged. Then your attention starts to slip. You think about something you need to do later. You notice a sound in the next room. You remember a conversation from earlier. Each time, you pull yourself back, but it's harder. The mental effort of constantly redirecting your attention becomes more tiring than the actual work. Most people conclude they have a focus problem. They don't. They have a setup problem. The brain isn't designed to sustain attention on something it finds unmotivating or confusing. That's not a flaw. It's a feature. In nature, an animal that stayed focused on the wrong thing would starve or get eaten. The attention system evolved to scan constantly for what matters. If your brain keeps wandering away from your work, it's telling you something. The conditions aren't right yet. So what are the right conditions? Let's break this down into what actually works. The first principle is this. Focus follows curiosity, not discipline. You cannot sustain deep attention on something that seems meaningless or incomprehensible to you. Before you try to focus, you need to activate interest. This sounds backwards to people who think focus comes first, but watch what happens when you reverse the order. Instead of sitting down and trying to force yourself through material, spend the first few minutes finding something curious about it. Not something you should find interesting, but something that genuinely puzzles you. Look at the chapter title and ask, what question is this trying to answer? Flip through and find something that seems strange or surprising. The goal isn't to understand it yet, just to locate something your brain wants to figure out. This takes maybe 3 minutes, but it changes everything. Now, when you start reading or working, you're not forcing attention. Your brain is pulling towards something it wants to know. The difference feels completely different. The second principle, focus requires a clear target. Vague intentions scatter attention. I need to study physics is too broad. Your brain doesn't know what to grab onto. But I need to understand why this equation has that particular form. Or I want to figure out how these three concepts connect. Gives your attention system something specific to lock onto. Here's an experiment you can try. Take any difficult material, anything you've been avoiding. Before you start, write down one specific question you want to answer from it. Not what you're supposed to learn, but what you're genuinely curious about, even if it seems like a small question. Then read with that question in mind. What you'll notice is that your attention becomes selective. Information related to your question jumps out. Irrelevant details fade into background. This isn't magic. It's just how attention works. Give it a target, and it stops wandering. Leave it without one, and it searches constantly. The third principle might seem obvious, but most people violate it constantly. Remove friction before you start. Every small obstacle to working creates a decision point, and decisions drain attention. If you need to get up to find a pencil, that's friction. If you have to search for which page you stopped on last time, that's friction. If your workspace is cluttered with distractions, that's friction. Each one seems trivial, but they accumulate. Your brain learns that starting requires effort, and it resists. The solution is to prepare everything in advance. Lay out your materials. Open to the right page. Have paper and pencil ready. Clear your desk. Make it so that when you sit down, there's nothing between you and the work. This seems like a small thing, but it's the difference between a brain that resists starting and one that flows into it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. These three things, curiosity, clear targets, and removing friction, they're not really about focus at all. They're about something that comes before focus. Call it momentum. The brain is very good at continuing what it's already doing. The hard part isn't staying focused, it's getting into focus in the first place. Think about a heavy door on a good hinge. Starting to push it takes real effort, but once it's moving, keeping it moving takes almost nothing. Your attention works the same way. The activation energy is high, but once you're engaged, maintaining that engagement is natural. This is why the first 5 minutes matter so much. If you can get through those first 5 minutes with genuine engagement, not forced attention but actual interest, the next hour becomes easy. But if you start wrong, if you try to force it from the beginning, you never build momentum. You spend the whole time pushing. So here's the complete approach. Before you even try to focus, do the setup. Find something that genuinely interests you about the material. Form a specific question you want to answer. Prepare everything so there's no friction. Then, and only then, begin. But there's something deeper happening here. Something about how the brain actually processes difficult material. Most people think focus means staring harder at something until it makes sense. That's not how understanding works. Real focus is active, not passive. It's asking questions, making connections, testing ideas against what you already know. When you're truly focused on understanding something, your brain is doing constant work. It's asking, does this make sense? How does it connect to what I learned before? What would happen if this part were different? Could I explain this to someone else? This active questioning is what keeps attention locked in. It's interesting. Passive reading or listening, no matter how hard you concentrate, always feels like work because your brain knows it's not really processing anything. Here's a strange fact about the mind. It can't stay focused on something it doesn't understand unless it's actively trying to understand it. Read that again. You can't concentrate on confused material by trying harder to concentrate. You have to change what you're doing. You have to engage with the confusion itself. Ask what specifically confuses you. Try to state the problem in different words. Draw a diagram, even if it's rough. Work an example with simple numbers. The moment you do this, something shifts. Your attention stops trying to escape because now there's something to grab onto. You're not just absorbing information, you're wrestling with ideas. The brain finds that interesting. Let's get practical. Imagine you're facing something genuinely difficult. A dense textbook chapter, a complex proof, a technical manual. The traditional approach is to start at the beginning and try to push through. This works for easy material but fails for hard material because your attention gives out before you make progress. Try this instead. Open to the middle of the section. Look at a diagram or an equation or a key statement. Don't try to understand it yet. Just look at it and ask, what would I need to know to make sense of this? Write down your guesses. Then flip back and scan for those pieces. What you're doing is creating a structure before you try to fill it in. Your brain now has questions it wants answered, and those questions guide your attention through the material. When you find something relevant, it clicks into place because you already have a slot for it. The focus required is much less because the work is organized. Here's another technique that works remarkably well. Before reading a section, close the book and write down everything you think you already know about the topic, even if it's not much. Just rough notes, whatever comes to mind. This activates relevant knowledge and creates gaps you can feel. When you then read, you're not starting from zero. You're building on something, correcting misunderstandings, filling gaps. The brain finds this much more engaging than trying to absorb new information in a vacuum. Now, let's talk about what to do when focus breaks, because it will. No one maintains perfect focus for hours. The question is, what you do when you notice your mind has wandered. Most people do one of two things, both wrong. Either they get frustrated and try to force themselves back, or they give up and assume they're not capable of focusing today. Here's what actually works. Recognize the wander, don't judge it, and restart with a new question. When you notice you've been reading without comprehension, stop. Don't go back and reread mechanically. Instead, ask yourself what you were just trying to understand. If you can't answer, flip back to where you last remember engaging and find something specific to focus on. A particular sentence that seems important, a connection you want to explore, anything that gives you a new entry point. The restart is quick, maybe 30 seconds, but it reestablishes the conditions that allow focus. You're not forcing attention back, you're recreating the curiosity and target that make attention natural. Over time, you get better at this. Not because your focus muscle gets stronger, that's not how it works, but because you learn to recognize earlier when conditions are breaking down. You notice when you're reading without asking questions. You catch yourself before spending 20 minutes in a fog. The cycles of focus and refocus get tighter, and the overall quality of your engagement improves. There's something else worth understanding about deep focus. It's not constant. It pulses. Even when someone appears completely absorbed, their attention is actually cycling through different modes. Intense concentration for a few minutes, then a slight relaxation where the mind integrates what it just learned, then back to intensity. This is normal and healthy. The problem comes when you misinterpret the relaxation phase as losing focus. You panic and try to force intensity back immediately. This actually disrupts the natural rhythm. Better to recognize that after 10 or 15 minutes of hard concentration, your brain needs a moment to consolidate. Not a long break, not a distraction, just a slight easing. Look up, take a breath, think about what you just learned, then return. These natural rhythms, once you stop fighting them, make sustained focus possible. You're not trying to maintain peak intensity for an hour straight. You're riding waves. Intense focus followed by brief integration. Over and over. The overall effect is what we call deep work, but up close it's more like a heartbeat than a marathon. Let's pull this together with a concrete scenario. You have 3 hours to work on something difficult and important. A research problem, a complex text, detailed calculations, whatever. You want those 3 hours to actually count. Here's what works. Before starting, spend 5 minutes clarifying what you're trying to accomplish. Not a broad goal like make progress, but specific. What question will you try to answer? What understanding do you want to have that you don't have now? Write it down in one sentence. Then spend another 5 minutes setting up. Gather materials. Clear space. Open to the right page. Eliminate obvious distractions. Make it so that when you're ready, you can simply begin. Now, start, but not with the hardest part. Start with something related but slightly easier. Something that activates relevant thinking but doesn't immediately overwhelm. Maybe that's reviewing what you worked on last time. Maybe it's working a simple example before tackling the complex one. The goal is to build momentum before you need it. After 10 or 15 minutes, once you feel engaged, then move to the difficult core of the work. Now you have momentum, activated knowledge, and a clear question driving you forward. The focus you need is available because the conditions are right. Work for 30 to 40 minutes at high intensity. Then take a real break. Not checking other things. That's not a break for your attention system. Actually step away. Walk around. Look out a window. Let your mind go completely loose for 5 minutes. This isn't wasted time. It's when consolidation happens. Return and repeat. Each cycle builds on the last. By the 3rd hour, you're not trying to focus anymore. You're caught up in the problem. Your brain wants to continue. That's what real focus feels like. Not forced, but pulled. Here's what people miss. The quality of focus matters far more than the duration. 1 hour of genuine active engagement beats 4 hours of forced attention every time. Most people measure focus by how long they can keep themselves in the chair. But that's measuring endurance, not depth. Real depth comes from working with your brain's natural tendencies, not against them. The brain focuses easily on what seems important and comprehensible. When it doesn't focus, usually that means something about the task seems pointless or too confusing. The solution isn't to try harder. It's to make the work feel important by connecting it to genuine curiosity and make it comprehensible by breaking it into questions you can actually engage with. This might sound like it only applies to intellectual work, but the principles are universal. Whether you're learning something new, solving a problem, or creating something, the mechanics are the same. Find what's interesting, make it specific, remove friction, build momentum, work in rhythm, let the depth come naturally rather than forcing it. There's something almost paradoxical about focus. The harder you try to force it, the more it resists, but set up the right conditions and it happens almost effortlessly. Not because focus is easy, but because you're finally working with your brain's design instead of against it. The real skill isn't learning to concentrate harder. It's learning to create the conditions where concentration becomes natural. That's the difference between fighting your attention and directing it. One exhausts you. The other energizes you even as it challenges you. So maybe the question isn't how to force your brain into deep focus. Maybe it's how to stop forcing and start allowing. Set up the conditions. Ask real questions. Remove the friction. Start with momentum. Let the depth build naturally. That's not a trick or a technique. That's understanding how focused attention actually works and working with it rather than against it. If you found this useful, there's one thing worth doing. Try it. Take something you've been avoiding because it requires focus you don't think you have. Spend 5 minutes finding one genuinely interesting question in it. Set everything up, then start. Notice what happens when you stop trying to force focus and start creating the conditions for it instead. The difference might surprise you.